Aha! It's Friday, so you know what that means. It's time for Florida Man Friday. The format, Kevin writes it, I read it today. Darwin Awards, combining two of my favorite things, Florida men and Florida men no longer being able to reproduce either because death or because they shot their dick off with a gun, which actually happens. I saw one of the subtitles for today's episode. So let's jump in! I wasn't actually planning on writing another Darwin themes episode ever again after the last one. I kind of lost the plot and I was so focused on finding deaths that fit within the criteria of the theme that I lost sight of what makes Darwin Awards so entertaining rather than just being tragic deaths. Yeah. Death is a lot less funny than someone shooting their willy off with a gun because they're like, hey, check me out, boys. Woo, look how brave I am. And then they shot their dick off. Like, bruh. Because Darwin Awards is just about losing the ability to reproduce, not necessarily dying, although that is one of the ways. One of the ones that always sticks with me. I think, and I have no idea if this is like one of those false memories, but I swear at school, in the school library, there was this big library, all of these books and stuff. And we used to find it very amusing to like open up the big dictionary and just go to F section and then look at all the things. Because it was such a big dictionary, it'd be like, oh, they've defined f*** off. And we found that oh so very, very funny as 12-year-olds. And I swear there was a book of Darwin Awards in there. Or somehow there was a Darwin Awards book at school. And one that really stuck with me was there was this guy who was like throwing like, it's insane. But he was throwing like concrete, reinforced concrete blocks, like from a demolition site or whatever, off a bridge onto like cars below, like a f***ing psycho. And he got his just desserts because he threw one of these bars off with this, the metal that goes in and reinforces concrete, had this hook on the end, and he pushes it over, and it like hooks his balls off and his dick and like tears. And I'm like, that stuck with me because that's really intense. So I don't believe that was in my school library, but for some reason that's the memory I have, that the Darwin Awards was a book at our school library, which makes no sense. That was such a long tangent that my teleprompter almost turned off. Sorry, let's carry on. Since this is by far the most requested theme for a Florida Man Friday episode, I have no choice but to give it another go. I mean, I could ignore all of the people in the comments because you're not the boss of me. No, Kevin, I'm the boss of you. But I've decided to placate your incessant begging anyway. Besides, since the only requirement this time is that the stories happened in Florida rather than something far more restrictive like Guinness record attempts, there's no way I can possibly f*** this up. And I've got good news for you, Simon. Every time there's a Darwin Awards episode, you always lament the fact that the people involved always die screaming endlessly into the void that you want someone to shoot his cock off. After all, Darwin Awards don't... Oh no, was this what I saw as the shooting the cock off? Please tell me there's an entry about shooting the cock off. So since you're always asking for such a story, then without further ado, Florida man attempts murder but shoots his own cock instead. The one I've seen is like not someone attempting murder and like shooting their cock off, which I'm not entirely sure how that would work, but people who for some reason point loaded guns at their cocks. They're just like, hey boys, why are you doing this? Don't do that. And then posting pictures on social media. Like, what's wrong with you? Guns misfire. They have hair triggers. Like, I don't know. I've shot a lot of guns. And, God, two school stories in 1 week. I used to go to the shooting range at school. We had a shooting range at school. It's less weird than you think because we had like Navy. We had cadets and I was in the Navy cadets and you could just go to the shooting range and just shoot guns for free. So I was like, cool. And the like basic rule shooting guns is never point a gun at anything you don't intend to shoot. Doesn't matter if the gun is unloaded or anything like that. If you don't want to shoot it, don't point it at it. Like, number of things that I want to point my gun at. There's like, a lot of things. But number one, I mean, maybe my kids. Number two, maybe my wife. Number three, my cock. I want more details on this case. Sorry, we will. This is going to be ridiculously long unless we get on with it. Let's get on with it. I want more details on this case very badly, but alas, the trial doesn't start for another week at the time of writing, so there are some questions I sadly don't have the answers to. That said, this took place at 3 p.m. on the 4th of July this year. A merry 4th of July is Independence Day. Some guy celebrating Independence Day with murder and shooting his cock off. where 36-year-old Florida man Leiden Guerrero Prado confronted two men outside of his girlfriend's apartment complex. One of the men was his girlfriend's ex, which leads me to believe that his presence at the complex was very much unwelcomed and that Leiden was trying to do the right thing. However, even if that was the case, he chose to do it in the worst and most inept way possible. After a small verbal altercation, Leiden reached into the pocket of his hoodie, pulled out a gun, and fired 2 shots at his girlfriend's ex. I also really wonder about people who just keep guns in their pockets. Like, get a f***ing holster. You've bought a gun. Get a holster. Don't keep it loose in the pocket of your hoodie. Are you insane? What's wrong with you? You know where a holster points? F***ing down and away. I mean, what, just, it's not going to shoot you, or if anything, it's going to graze your leg. Max. In the hoodie, it's like pointing at your insides or your willy. What are you doing? The interaction was caught on security footage, but that footage hasn't been released, so I can't say for certain how close the two men were standing when this happened. Based on the reporting, it sounds like they're maybe 5 feet apart and almost certainly no more than 10. And yet Leiden managed to miss his target with both rounds at close range. One bullet grazed a pant leg, but not the actual leg itself, and the other missed completely. Leiden then attempted to hide the gun back in his hoodie, at which point it discharged again and shot him in the cock. The ex and his buddy fled the scene, and Leiden walked into the parking garage and let himself back into the building using a key fob given to him by his girlfriend. He went up to her apartment on the 3rd floor, disposed of the gun, presumably poorly, then went back to the parking garage and lied on the ground, which is where emergency services found him. This is what he's trying to... Bro, have you not heard of security cameras? You think that that's not just going to be like, what are you doing? Use your brain. There's security cameras everywhere. After a visit to the hospital, Leiden was arrested on charges of attempted second-degree murder and illegally possessing a firearm as a convicted felon. His previous conviction was for grand theft auto. He's stepping it up with attempted murder, isn't he? He has been in jail awaiting trial since July, and while in custody, he's received multiple additional charges of battery while detained, meaning he keeps getting into fights in jail. They also added a charge of tampering with evidence for his attempt to dispose of the gun. Oh! Yeah, but dude, you got attempted murder on that rap sheet. It's like always, look, this isn't legal advice, but yo, he made the right call by trying to get rid of that gun. Like, in my opinion, not legal advice. Because, like, if the chances are that it's going to get you off on attempted murder, getting a possible extra charge with attempted murder of tampering with evidence, worthwhile, my dude. Dispose of that gun. Don't do that. Don't commit crimes. Don't tamper with evidence. Don't perjure yourself. But I mean, use your brain as well, right? Right? Don't use your brain. Fuck's sake, Simon, what's wrong with you today? Get on with it! However, perhaps the strangest part of this story was a comment made by the West Miami Chief of Police. Unlike regular Miami, which is massive, West Miami is a small town with a population of only about 7,000 people. It's also a really safe place with very little violent crime. That's what makes it shocking that the Chief of Police there said, "This is very rare." While it's almost certain he was talking about gun violence in general, I chose to believe that the Chief would say that it was rare but not unprecedented for someone in West Miami to accidentally shoot off their cock during an attempted murder. Well, Kevin, it is Florida, so, you know, there's going to be, it's possible, Kevin, definitely. Florida man dies trying to retrieve pigeon from power lines. Bro, the pigeons are up there, they're safe because they ain't touching the ground. What are you doing? Pigeons make great pets. Really? Many argue that pigeons are the best birds to keep as pets, and I'm not just saying that because I don't want Mike Tyson to kick my ass. I didn't even know Mike Tyson loves pigeons. A friend of mine from school, we're doing a 3rd school story today. Shit, let's go. A friend of mine from school, his mum had a birdhouse in the garden, which she had filled with doves. Just like this big birdhouse, and there were so many doves like fucking around in there and shit. And pigeons would also come, because pigeons are like, doves are basically like, Aryan pigeons. There's a point to this. And she would be like, oh, I don't like the pigeons in there. I just like the Aryan ones, the doves. She's a white supremacist. Not allegedly. Like, she wasn't. In terms of pigeons, look, obviously I'm just talking about the pigeons.
She's not a Nazi. Just because she gets a little bit weird when you watch Curb does not mean that
just making a joke. I'm trying to remember my friend's mum's name and I can't remember her name. Let's just call her... can't even make up a name because I can't think of one. She was quite old. She's not going to watch this video. It's all right. And so she'd put all these pigeons when they came, she'd put them in a little cage. And whenever they went on a big trip, she'd take these pigeons, like a big trip, like, hours of driving. And then she'd, get there and she'd release the pigeons. And the pigeons would come back. Because that's what pigeons do. They home in. They're like, I know where I came from. I'm going back to that, white supremacy birdhouse. That's where I belong. I'm going to be fucking your white pigeons. What the fuck? And then they would have these ones that are they're white, but they've got all these gray patches on them. All right, Aryan coconut. And she'd be like, I don't want those ones either. This is weird. I gotta stop talking about this. It sounds weird, and it was. Oh my God, I thought it would just be a good joke, but now it sounds super weird. What's wrong with me? But regardless of what type of bird you keep as a pet, there's one key difference between birds and people that you must keep in mind. Birds can safely stand on power lines and people cannot. I mean, from a very theoretical standpoint, a person could safely stand on a power line so long as they weren't touching anything else and the line was strong enough to hold them. But this is not a situation that would ever exist from a practical standpoint. I don't know. Surely, if you've got a massive, fuck-off pylon, right, and it's, got those wires running between it, there's going to be a hell of a lot of weight between those two pylons on that wire. So surely if you, somehow magically fell out of a plane and grabbed onto it with your hands and were just hanging on it, you're going to be totally fine. If it snaps, motherfucker, let go. Otherwise, you're cooked. Literally. And since people can't fly up to power lines, the generally only way to make contact with them is from the ground. This, as 36-year-old Florida man Elian Garcia Rivera learns, is an absolutely terrible idea. It was March 2019, and one of Elian's pet pigeons had left his coop and flown up to the power line suspended above his yard. Rather than trying to throw something at the bird to get it down, Elian instead decided he was going to retrieve it using a 20-foot-long aluminium rod. Bruh, you could at least use wood. Don't use wood. I'm sure it can, if there's enough power running through there, wood could probably conduct electricity. For some reason, my microwave and oven, we've got this microwave, and below it is an oven, and they're stacked on top of each other, obviously. Don't need to explain that. And then the coffee machine sits in this little alcove next to it. You make coffee and you're putting it in. For some reason, if you touch your arm or any flesh against the microwave and the oven at the same time, it gives you a right shock. Not a little static shock, you've rubbed your feet on the carpet. Oh, this is connected to the mains. And why am I telling this story? Oh, right. Yeah. So we had an electrician come round and fix it. And I was like, okay, well, it must be fixed. I touched it. Oh, God damn it, electrician. Why didn't you test it? For fuck's sake. So now when I test things, I just hold a glass or I don't know, a plate up against it. And then you can feel just the little buzz through it rather than it actually electrocuting you. Don't think that only metal conducts electricity, all right? That's what I'm trying to say. I can't imagine I actually need to explain the physics of why this is a stupid idea to anyone, but I'm going to just in case. To start, aluminium, like most metals, is an extremely good conductor of electricity indeed. We get into all sort of shit about me today. I renovated a house and all of the wires, before they used copper wires in buildings, they used aluminium. And all of the wires in this house were aluminium. So I had to have all of that shit ripped out. The electricity had to be completely redone. Copper put in there. And it was enormously expensive because copper is, and so is everyone ripping out all of the wires in your house. Electricity also tries to go from higher electrical potential to lower, and there's no electrical potential lower than the ground, at least not in most practical systems. This means that if you touch power lines with a metal rod from the ground, that incredibly high voltage is going to race down the pole and through your body to get to the ground. And that's what happened to Elian, and he was discovered at about 3 p.m. that afternoon on the ground by his pigeon coos. He was declared dead on arrival at the hospital, and that's why you all should have said more attention, and that's why you should have paid more attention to the PSAs that ran at the end of every episode of G.I. Joe. Wait! Kevin, I was waiting for the bit where it's and then he shot his cock off. You said no one was going to die, Kevin. And he just died. I was like, wait, he was lifting up the pole with his cock and it just electrocuted his cock off? No, oh no, everyone's going to be dead from now on. Kevin's just got one example of the cock shooting. Florida woman crashes plane while having sex with students. This is an older case, so there isn't much information available. Most information comes from the National Transportation Safety Board, who undoubtedly used it as a cautionary tale to remind pilots to keep their pants on. It was December the 23rd, 1991, and an unnamed Florida woman and Florida man were aboard a Piper PA-34 Seneca, a small private plane. From what I can gather, Florida woman was a flying instructor and Florida man was a student. He already held his pilot's license, but they were still going for some additional instruction. Yeah, you have to take like an hour or 2 hours every year to keep your pilot's license. Specifically, they were supposed to be practicing simulated instrument flight, which is when you basically pull down the blinds and fly only using the instruments rather than visual cues. Or he's just expanding his license so he's got an instrument rating. Maybe that's what was going on. That seems more likely now that we've got more information. Not interesting, Simon. Carry on. This was the official story anyway, but it seems like their real goal was to join the Mile High Club. When you're in the sky. Who the fuck's going to be looking in the window? When the plane was recovered, both pilots, like Tom Cruise, flips his like F-16 around. He's like looking up from underneath. Doesn't happen in real life. When the plane was recovered, both pilots were found in a state of undress with the passenger seat fully reclined. Oh, God. There was no evidence of rips or tears in their clothing indicating it was removed voluntarily. Basically, what it seems happened is the two decided they were going to the passenger seat, and in the throes of passion, one of them accidentally kicked the throttle to maximum acceleration. The plane exceeded its maximum safe speed, and the right wing tore off, sending the aircraft and its overly horny passengers to the ground. Oh my God, that's terrible. I don't know if one or both of the people involved were married or something, but just so we're clear, a motel is much cheaper than pilot lessons. Although, depending on the motel, it isn't really any safer. Yeah, motels can be grim.
What does blue mean?
I've stayed in some truly grim motels. Florida man and Florida fish engage in mutually assured destruction. The Goliath grouper is the heaviest species of sea bass, with an average adult weighing between 400 and 600 pounds. They can even exceed 800 pounds in mass, and they were once a popular target of fishermen as they are so massive and they're considered quite tasty. Goliath groupers were commonly hunted by spear fishermen in the Florida Keys until 1990, when it became illegal. What people do today? Spear fishing? It's the 90s. We've invented the fishing rod.
Good morning. Nice day for fishing, ain't it?
It sure is. Good luck.
They were still hunted pretty regularly after that, they just weren't supposed to be. But that brings us to 42-year-old Florida man Gary Cagle. Gary was a bartender in Key West who, through a series of wise investments, had a ton of time spent free diving in the ocean. Sounds pretty nice. He was in exceptional shape, and his friends said that he was an accomplished diver who could hold his breath for 4 to 5 minutes and dive to depths of 75 feet without an oxygen tank. God damn, dude. That's really impressive. Yes, indeed, Kevin. The deepest I ever dove was only 80 or 90 feet, and that was with an oxygen tank, so going basically the same depth without one is a truly remarkable skill. I think I've probably been down to 10 meters, like without a tank, which is what, 30 feet? Something like that? Going down, how many? 75 feet? That's fucking deep, bro. And I thought going down 10 meters was pretty fucking deep shit. In addition to performing superhuman feats underwater, Gary also engaged in spearfishing. His friends claimed that he would never have hunted a Goliath grouper intentionally, so what happened must have been self-defense, but the Goliath is known for being incredibly non-aggressive, so most marine wildlife experts don't believe that story. But whatever the reason was, on September the 9th, 2006, Gary shot a Goliath grouper straight through the gills with his spear gun. Oh, he's using a spear gun. I kind of imagine spearfishing as like dudes with like sharpened sticks, like in that Tom Hanks movie where he's on the island. The way most spear guns work is that the spear is connected to the gun through a line or rope. That way, if the shot misses, the spear can be easily retrieved rather than just littering the ocean floor with spears until it looks like a stage out of Mortal Kombat. That's great if it misses, but if the spear hits, it means that the hunter would be tethered to a massive fish. In Gary's case, the Goliath he speared was only about 200 pounds, not 600, but it still had over a stone on him and was better adapted for underwater movement. The injured fish began doing what injured fish do, flailing around, panicking, and having an overall unpleasant time. While doing this, the line got wrapped around Gary's wrist 3 times, pinning him against the side of the fish. It then swam into a hole in the coral about 17 feet underwater, where it remained until the two drowned to death together. Oh my God, that's intense. However, this sort of thing happens all the time. Really? Not the dying part, but the part about spearfishers getting tangled up in the lines. It's so common that carrying a knife to cut yourself free is considered the second most basic safety requirement when spearfishing. The most basic would be to not aim the gun at yourself, or your cock for that matter. According to one expert and key director of operations for a Key West diving company, not wearing a knife is like crossing the highway with your eyes closed. It's not like Gary forgot his knife, or his boat, or it fell off him just before getting in the water either. It was at his friend Laurie's house. Laurie said that she didn't know why the knife was there because it was always on his leg, which certainly suggests that he genuinely knew better than to go spearfishing without one. That means that Gary got dressed, went out on his jet ski, and dove underwater. This guy's life, though, dude. He just lives in Florida. He goes out on a jet ski. He goes diving and just hunted fish with a spear gun. What a badass, dude. All while well aware that he didn't have his important knife with him. Even though he knew spearfishing without a knife was an incredibly dangerous and stupid idea, Gary decided to just go for it anyway and attach himself to a fish that weighed more than he did. On the bright side though, Gary did say he always wanted to die in the water. He just probably didn't mean so soon. Florida man foot fetishes himself to death. Holy shit, how? This next story is beyond insane. Honestly, it should have its own casual criminalist episode. That's another show I do. It's a podcast, also on YouTube. Check it out. But we'll have to settle for the heavily abridged version today. This is the story of 28-year-old Florida man Brian Loudermilk and his 29-year-old wife Stephanie. And while it's not at all important to the story, I still think it's worth mentioning that their 2-year-old son was named Spawn. What the fuck? Dude, why would you name your kid Spawn? Anyway, Brian loved feet. Like, way too much. He placed personal ads looking for women to step on him and just to find other fans of feet. However, he was also into something much darker than regular weird foot fetishes, and that was crushing. Fans of crushing derive sexual pleasure from seeing women step on and kill insects and small animals like mice. The fuck is wrong with you? It's not the sort of thing that most people are willing to indulge in, and Brian's earliest attempts didn't involve willing participants. As a teenager, Brian would superglue lizards or frogs under the desks of his teachers, specifically those who wore sandals, so that he could see them unknowingly step on the animals.
Nasty, dude.
That is some fuck. I don't know why, but that hits just as some of the weirdest shit that I've read in a while. Like, skin crawly weird. I could go on, but suffice to say that he was extraordinarily fucked up. And when he met Stephanie, he finally found what he was looking for. I can't find an exact height listed anywhere, but from everything I've read, I'm pretty sure that Brian was a short dude. Stephanie was a 6-foot-tall Native American woman, and she was allegedly willing to indulge in all his fantasies. I say she was allegedly willing because while there is plenty of proof that she did indulge in his fantasies, she was also allegedly beaten and forced to do these things against her will. Well, that's what... Whichever is true will never be definitively proven, and I genuinely have no clue which is the case. Either way, Stephanie would make crushing videos which Brian would then sell. Who the fuck is buying this, bro? What the fuck? You need to go to jail, my dude. She would also walk all over him wearing nothing but heels, including walking on his face and balls. Ah! Aha! What is sexy about having a 200-pound person step on your ballsack with stilettos, you ask? I have no fucking idea, and frankly, I'd like to have kids someday, so I'm not going to test it out for science. I'm sure this was all weird enough for you, Simon, but it gets way weirder. It doesn't. I don't know. What? I don't want to step on his balls with high heels. He also had a penchant for guns. Oh no. And Stephanie one day shot his cock off. That's how I want this to end, but it's not. I'm just making it up. I'll spare you some of the details, but there is one other thing I have to mention. Brian had a 2x4 that he attached a metal plate shaped like a sandal to the end of. No. He had written the words, "My wooden Stephanie," across it, and Stephanie told police that he would frequently take it to the bathroom with him while he masturbated. Oh my dude, what? For a while, things between Brian and Stephanie were fine, relatively speaking, but by 1999, their relationship had hit a rough patch. Brian was doing loads of cocaine, and Stephanie was dating some dude named Robert, who was living in their house. Okay. I wonder if being a cock's a fetish of his. But while the cocaine wasn't enough to kill him, in June of that year, Brian's horny antics would finally be his undoing. Do people die from too much cocaine? I don't think so. I think it just makes them f***ed up, right? I mean, don't do cocaine. I'm sure someone's died from cocaine. But it's not like heroin. You're not like just, oh, what happened to heroin overdose? What happened to cocaine overdose? So what did he die of? Weed overdose. He could already have his balls crushed on the daily by his 6-foot goddess, which was his dream come true, but he wanted more. He had spent most of his life fantasizing about being trampled to death by some gigantic woman, yet Stephanie wasn't big enough to actually kill him. Or maybe she just wasn't trying hard enough. But you know what was big enough to crush him to death? Their red 1994 Honda Passport. Of course, the goal wasn't actually for him to die. He dug a little ditch to put his body in and positioned a pillow and a board over his body. It was clear that he had no understanding of physics and biology, but in his mind, he was doing this safely and was a completely willing participant. Once Brian positioned himself in the ditch beneath the board, Stephanie then drove the car forward and parked it on top of him. It's unclear how long the car was parked there before his friends came by and saw his legs sticking out from under the car, but when they came to check on him, he said that he couldn't feel his legs. They then backed the SUV off his body, which sent Brian's system into shock. The circulation had been completely cut off to his legs, which led to a massive buildup of lactic acid and other toxins. With the car moved, all these toxins were now free to go in his body. Ah! Dude! Brian's friends went inside, got Stephanie to call 911, and Brian was rushed to the hospital. He died a few hours later. This is so f***ed up. Investigators were profoundly confused when they saw the initial scene with literally no idea how this had happened, but eventually, all of the details came to light. In the end, Stephanie was convicted on 2 counts of cruelty to animals for all the crushing videos she and Brian made, and was sentenced to 1 year probation and a $105 fine. That's not enough. If you're torturing animals, I'm not the biggest animal fan in the world, but I don't like torturing animals. Stop that shit. It's fucking weird. But she was not charged with any crimes related to violence against Brian or his murder, which makes sense, given his lifelong and very well documented desire to be crushed by a woman. It looks like there was a custody thing involving her little spawn, but her motion to dismiss those charges was granted, and she hasn't had any other legal issues since. As I said, though, this was the heavily abridged version of events, and there's a whole lot more foot fetish nonsense that we could get into. So what do you think, Simon? Would you enjoy reading a 90-minute casual criminalist about this case? No, Kevin. No, I would not, Kevin. Jesus. Thanks for being here. Please tell me there's an entry about shooting the cock off.